No one in Frost Hall spoke of the old stable after sunset. They crossed themselves when the wind blew from the north yard. They lowered their voices when the wolves inside began to cough, whine, or drag their claws against the wooden walls. Some said the place was cursed. Others said the Moonguard wolves had finally gone mad after too many wars. Mara Vale did not believe either one. She only knew suffering when she heard it. That night, while the palace slept beneath a hard fall of snow, Mara slipped out through the laundry passage with a bundle tucked beneath her arm. Her boots were cracked. Her cloak was too thin. The cold bit through her sleeves until her hands turned red, but she kept walking. Two guards stood beneath the archway near the north yard. One of them noticed her and laughed. "There goes the stable ghost." The other snorted. "Let her go. If the beasts eat her, that's less laundry to count." Mara did not answer. She only held the bundle tighter. Inside were torn blankets, a clay bottle of warm water, stale bread softened in broth, and a handful of moonroot she had gathered before dawn. None of it was worth anything to the royal healers. To the wolves, it might mean one more night. The Frostmourne stables waited at the edge of the courtyard like a forgotten wound. Its roof sagged under snow. Broken shutters knocked softly in the wind. A strip of yellow quarantine cloth still hung across the main door, stiff with ice. Mara did not use that door. She slipped around the side, to the small laundry entrance no one had bothered to lock. The hinges groaned when she pushed it open. The smell of sickness rolled out, first old straw, bitter medicine, cold fur, and pain. A low growl moved through the darkness. Mara stopped just inside and lowered her eyes. "I know," she whispered. "I am late." Another growl answered, weaker this time. She waited, letting them smell her, letting them decide. She never rushed them. She had learned that fear became teeth when cornered. At last, two silver eyes opened in the far stall. Brannock, the old white wolf, had once carried Alpha King Cale Thorn through the Battle of Black River. Bards still sang of him in the taverns. Children carved his shape from pinewood. Warriors touched his name before going to war. Now he lay in rotten straw, ribs showing beneath dull fur, one massive paw swollen and wrapped in a healer's bandage that smelled wrong. Mara moved slowly toward him. "No biting the good hand tonight," she murmured. "It is currently the only hand with a plan." Brannock watched her with tired eyes. She knelt beside him and unwrapped the old bandage. The skin beneath was angry and raw, burned in a thin circle where silver had touched too long. Mara's throat tightened, but she said nothing. Anger would not clean the wound. She dipped cloth into warm water and began to wash. Around her, the other wolves stirred. One lifted its head. Another dragged itself closer. A young gray female whimpered until Mara reached back and touched her nose. "I see you," Mara said softly. "You are next." For hours, she worked without stopping. She cleaned wounds, changed damp straw, broke bread into broth, rubbed moonroot beneath cold noses, so the wolves could breathe easier. When one shivered too hard to swallow, she held the bowl to its mouth and waited until it tried again. No one came. No healer. No guard. No noble who had once cheered these wolves through golden streets. Only Mara. Near dawn, the wind screamed through a broken window. Mara stuffed it with an old blanket, then sank down beside Brannock, too tired to stand. One by one, the wolves moved closer. Their bodies formed a living wall against the cold. Brannock lowered his great head onto her lap. Mara's eyes burned. She rested one trembling hand between his ears. "You deserved better," she whispered. Outside, morning touched the snow. High above the courtyard, Alpha King Cale Thorn stood on the eastern tower, unable to sleep, unable to stop looking toward the stable he had failed to enter for weeks. Then he saw them. Fresh paw prints in the snow. Strong ones. Not the dragging marks of dying beasts. Beside them was another trail, small human footprints, leading straight from the stable door. Kael's eyes narrowed. Someone had been inside the cursed stable, and somehow, one of his dying wolves had walked out. Alpha King Cale Thorn did not call for guards. For once, he did not want reports, explanations, or careful lies dressed in royal language. He wanted the truth, beneath his own boots. So he descended the eastern tower alone. The morning courtyard lay silent under fresh snow. Every sound seemed too sharp, the scrape of his cloak against stone, the faint groan of the north wind, the distant crack of frozen wood. Ahead of him, the tracks crossed the yard in a narrow line. Wolf prints. Deep, steady, alive. Beside them were human footprints, smaller and lighter, pressed into the snow with the patience of someone who had walked this path many times. Cale followed them without blinking. The closer he came to Frostmourne's stables, the tighter his chest became. He had faced enemy kings with less dread than this broken building gave him. Behind those walls waited the last living pieces of battles he had survived, friends he had buried, and a wife whose laughter still haunted the winter air. He stopped before the side entrance. Not the sealed front door. The laundry passage. His jaw tightened. Someone had known about this door. Someone had left it unguarded. Someone had allowed a stranger to enter the most forbidden place in his kingdom, while every report told him the wolves were too dangerous to approach. A soft sound came from inside, not a growl. Breathing. Calm breathing. Cale pushed the door open. Warmth touched his face first. That alone made him freeze. The stable he remembered had been cold enough to kill hope, but now old blankets blocked the broken windows. Clean straw covered the floor. Clay bowls sat neatly near each stall. Bundles of moonroot hung from the beams, filling the air with a gentle, earthy scent. Then he saw her. A woman slept on the straw near the center of the stable, wrapped in a torn brown cloak. Her dark hair had fallen loose across her cheek. One hand rested against Brannock's neck. The old white wolf lay beside her, his massive head near her lap, breathing deeper than Cale had heard in months. Around them, the Moonguard wolves formed a circle, not a cage. A shield. Cale's hand moved toward his sword before he could stop himself. Brannock opened his eyes. The white wolf rose with painful slowness, but he rose. Cale forgot how to breathe. 3 days ago, Cassian had sworn Brannock could no longer stand. Yet now the old beast placed himself between the king and the sleeping woman. A warning rumbled through his chest. Cale's fingers tightened around the sword hilt. "Brannock," he said quietly. The wolf did not lower his head. That hurt more than Cale expected. Before he could step closer, the woman stirred. Her eyes opened slowly, unfocused at first, then wide with fear when she saw him. She tried to rise too quickly and winced, one hand pressing against her side. "Your Majesty," she whispered. Her voice was rough with exhaustion. Cale studied her. She was no noble spy, no trained assassin. Her clothes were patched, her boots split, her hands covered in tiny cuts and old burns. A bruise darkened one wrist, where something had grabbed her too hard. "Who are you?" he asked. She lowered her eyes. "Mara Vale, Your Majesty. What are you doing in my stable?" A small silence passed between them. One of the younger wolves whimpered behind her. Mara glanced back by instinct, not fear. Concern moved across her face, before caution returned. "They were cold," she said. Cale stared at her. That was all. No excuse. No plea. No clever story. "They were dying," he said. "Yes. The royal healers said no one could touch them." Mara looked down at Brannock's bandaged paw. Maybe no one asked them first. The answer was soft, but it struck like a blade. Footsteps suddenly crunched outside. Guards rushed into the doorway, spears raised. "My king, step away from her." Every wolf in the stable rose at once. The sound that filled the room was not madness. It was loyalty. Brannock bared his teeth, not at Mara, but at the guards. Cale lifted one hand. "Lower your weapons." The guards froze. Then another voice came from behind them, smooth and breathless. "Your Majesty, thank the moon you found her." High healer Cassian Vare stepped into view, his silver-trimmed cloak untouched by snow. Cale turned slowly. Cassian's eyes flicked once to Mara. Too fast. Too afraid. Cale noticed. And for the first time since entering the stable, he wondered whether the danger in this room had never been the wolves at all. The guards wanted to drag Mara from the stable. Brannock did not allow it. The old white wolf stood between her and the spears, his shoulders trembling from weakness, his teeth bared with quiet promise. Every guard knew that look. Even sick, Even starving, Brannock could still end a man before his final breath left him. Kael raised one hand. "No chains," he said. High Healer Cassian stiffened. "Your Majesty, she violated quarantine. And yet my wolves are standing." The words fell cold across the stable. No one answered. Mara kept her eyes lowered. Snowmelt dripped from the hem of her cloak. Her face was pale from exhaustion, but she did not cry, did not beg, did not hide behind the wolves who clearly wanted to protect her. That made Kael more unsettled than if she had screamed. He turned toward the guards. "Escort her to the council chamber." Gently. One guard reached for Mara's arm. Brannock growled. The man froze. Mara looked back at the wolf and gave the smallest shake of her head. "It's all right," she whispered. "No biting important people before breakfast." The guard blinked, unsure if he had just been insulted. Kael almost forgot to be angry. Almost. The walk through Frosthall Keep felt longer than it should have. Servants stopped in doorways. Kitchen girls pressed hands over their mouths. Stable boys whispered as Mara passed between two armed guards, her patched cloak dragging wet lines across polished stone. "Mad Omega," someone murmured. "Witch," another whispered. "She slept with those beasts." Mara heard every word. Kael could tell by the way her shoulders tightened, but she did not look at them. She walked as though shame were whether cold, unpleasant, but not worth answering. By the time they reached the council chamber, the elders had already gathered. That troubled Kael. No messenger had been sent ahead. Yet they were waiting. Elder Auric Mar sat near the center of the black oak table, his thin fingers folded neatly before him. Beside him stood Cassian, already wearing the expression of a man prepared to mourn a disaster he had helped create. Mara was placed before them like an offering. Auric looked her over once and sighed. "This is the girl?" "The intruder," Cassian corrected. Kael remained standing behind her. "Her name is Mara Vale." For the first time, Mara glanced up. Only for a heartbeat. Then down again. Cassian stepped forward. "Your Majesty, with respect, this matter is clear." The Omega entered a sealed medical zone repeatedly, handled infected animals, used unknown herbs, and endangered the entire keep. "I used moonroot," Mara said softly. Cassian's eyes sharpened. Kael noticed. "Moonroot is harmless," Mara continued. "It eases breathing. My mother used it for fevered children." Cassian smiled without warmth. "Your mother was not a royal healer." "No," Mara said. "She was usually called after royal healers failed." A few councilmen shifted. Kal-El looked at Mara again. There was no pride in her face. Only tired truth. Auric tapped one finger against the table. "Why were you in the stable at all?" Mara swallowed. "Because they were cold." Silence followed. One elder gave a faint, cruel laugh. "That is your defense?" Mara's hands curled at her sides. "No, my lord. It is the reason." Kael felt those words settle inside him. "Not defense. Reason." Cassian moved closer. "And you expect us to believe you risked your life for dying wolves out of kindness?" Mara looked at him then. Really looked. "No," she said. "I expect you not to understand it." The chamber went still. For one dangerous second, Kael thought Auric might order her struck. Instead, Cassian reached out and seized Mara's wrist. She flinched. A low warning rose in Kael's chest before he realized it came from him. Cassian released her at once. But the sleeve had slipped back. Kael saw the marks. Tiny cuts lined her fingers. Old burns crossed her knuckles. A half-healed bite marked the base of her thumb, shallow and careful, not an attack wound. Her skin was raw from cold water and herbs. Around one wrist was a dark bruise, shaped like fingers. Kael stepped closer. "Who did that?" Mara pulled her sleeve down. "It doesn't matter. It matters if I ask." Her mouth tightened. "A guard stopped me 2 nights ago. He said if I liked sick animals so much, I could join them." No one spoke. Kael looked at the guards near the door. Both men lowered their eyes. Cassian cleared his throat. "Your Majesty, sympathy must not distract from law." Before Kael could answer, a sound tore through the keep. A howl. Deep, ancient, alive. Every window in the council chamber trembled. Mara turned toward the sound before anyone else. Fear flashed across her face, not for herself, but for the wolf. Brannock, she whispered. Another howl followed, stronger than the first. Kale stood motionless. For weeks, that wolf had only cried in pain. Now he was calling. Not for the healer, not for the council, for her. And as every elder stared in uneasy silence, Kale finally understood that the Omega they mocked had become the one voice his dying wolves still trusted. The second howl ended, but its echo remained inside the council chamber like a warning. No one moved. Mara stood with her hands clenched at her sides, her face pale, her eyes fixed toward the north yard. She looked as though every part of her body wanted to run back to the stable, but she knew one wrong step could place a blade at her throat. Kael saw it. He also saw Cassian watching her. Not like a healer studying a danger. Like a man watching a candle flame drift too close to dry paper. Take her back to the stable, Kael said. Several elders spoke at once. Your Majesty. She broke quarantine. This is reckless. Kael's gaze cut across the table. The room fell quiet. She goes back, he said. Under my watch. Cassian's mouth tightened. If the wolves turn violent, I cannot promise her safety. Mara looked at him with tired honesty. You never promised it before. A sharp silence followed. Kael turned before anyone could answer. Come. The walk back through Frostall Keep felt different now. Servants still stared, but the whispers had changed. Fear remained. Yes, but curiosity had entered with it. People had heard Brannock's howl. Everyone had. When they reached Frostmourne stables, the wolves lifted their heads at once. Mara stepped in carefully. Kael remained close enough to stop her if needed, though he was beginning to wonder if she was the only person in the kingdom who did not need stopping. Brannock lay near the center stall, breathing hard. His old body trembled from the effort of standing earlier. Mara crossed the straw and knelt beside him without thinking. There you are, she whispered. Making dramatic speeches through the walls now? The old wolf exhaled against her sleeve. Kael watched her hands. They were gentle, but not timid. She checked Brannock's eyes, his gums, the heat behind his ears. Then she reached for the bandage around his swollen paw. Cassian stepped forward. I must insist that bandage remain in place. Mara paused. Kael looked at him. Why? It was treated with royal medicine. Mara lowered her eyes to the cloth. That is what worries me. Cassian's face cooled. Omega, you are not trained to judge royal medicine. No, Mara said softly, but I am trained to smell silver when it burns skin. She unwrapped the bandage. A raw red circle marked Brannock's paw, where the cloth had pressed against him. The wound beneath was cleaner than before, but the skin around it looked irritated, almost scorched. Kael crouched beside her. A bitter metallic scent rose from the cloth. His jaw tightened. Mara dipped 2 fingers into warm water, touched the stained bandage, then lifted it toward her nose. She frowned. There's winterbane ash in this. Cassian laughed once. Too quickly. Impossible. Mara did not look at him. Winterbane dries fever from the outside. But if used on wolves too long, it chills the blood. Makes them weak. Makes breathing harder. Kael's voice dropped. Would a royal healer know that? Mara's answer came quietly. A village midwife would. The stable went still. Cassian stepped closer, his silver cloak brushing the straw. Your Majesty, this girl is inventing accusations to protect herself. All used bandages must be returned to the healer hall for proper burning. A small gray wolf pup, barely old enough to stand steady, limped from beneath a broken trough. Mara turned. Little Thorn, no, you should be resting. The pup ignored her. In its mouth was a strip of dirty cloth. Cassian's eyes flashed. Give that here, he snapped. The pup darted behind Mara. Every wolf in the stable lifted its head. Kael held out his hand, not to Cassian, but to the pup. The little wolf hesitated, then padded forward and dropped the cloth into the king's palm. The fabric was stiff, with dried medicine. Along one edge, half hidden beneath brown stains, was a stamped mark in dark blue wax. The seal of the healer hall. Kael closed his fingers around it. Cassian had gone very still. Mara looked from the cloth to the healer, and the first true fear of the morning entered her eyes. Not fear of wolves, Not fear of punishment. Fear of understanding. Kale rose slowly. "Hi, healer," he said, his voice calm enough to frighten every guard at the door. "Why is the medicine killing my wolves?" Cassian opened his mouth. Before he could answer, Brannock growled. And this time, the old wolf was not looking at Mara. He was looking straight at the man who had been calling himself their healer. Brannock's growl filled the stable, like thunder trapped beneath old wood. Cassian took one careful step back. For a moment, no one spoke. The guards at the door held their spears too tightly. The wolves watched from the shadows, their silver eyes catching the pale morning light. Mara remained kneeling in the straw, one hand still resting near Brannock's wounded paw. Kale did not look away from his healer. "Answer me," he said. Cassian bowed his head, but only slightly. "Your Majesty, pain can confuse beasts. The wolf is frightened. The Omega has disturbed their treatment, and now they are reacting to familiar authority as if it were danger." Mara's lips parted, but she said nothing. Kale saw the effort it took. The old Mara might have lowered her head and swallowed the lie. This Mara looked at the stained bandage in the king's hand, then at Brannock's burned skin, and something quiet hardened behind her eyes. Before Kale could speak again, a sharp cry split the stable. A young black wolf thrashed in the far stall. Two guards rushed toward it. The wolf slammed its body against the wooden wall, claws tearing through straw. Foam gathered at the edge of its mouth. Its eyes rolled with pain, not madness, but the guards did not know how to see the difference. "It's turning," one shouted. Another raised his spear. "Kill it before it spreads." "No." Mara pushed herself to her feet. Kale reached for her arm. "Mara." She stopped only long enough to look at him. "If they strike him now, he dies afraid." The words were not loud. They did not need to be. The black wolf screamed again and collapsed against the stall gate. One guard stepped forward with his spear aimed at the creature's throat. Kale's command cracked through the room. "Hold!" The guard froze, trembling. Mara walked past him. Every breath in the stable seemed to stop. She carried no weapon, no chain, no royal medicine, only a small bowl of warm water and a strip of clean cloth she had pulled from her own sleeve. The black wolf snarled as she approached. "Mara," Cassian warned, too quickly, "do not touch it. That animal is beyond saving." She did not look back. "People say that when saving something becomes inconvenient," she said. The wolf lunged against the gate. Several guards flinched. Mara slowly lowered herself to the straw outside the stall and set the bowl down between them. Her hands were shaking now. Kale saw it clearly. She was afraid. Terrified, maybe. But she stayed. "You do not have to trust me," she whispered to the wolf. "Just breathe." The creature's growl broke into a painful cough. Mara did nothing. She did not reach, did not order, did not force kindness upon a frightened thing and call it mercy. She simply waited, her palms open on her knees, her eyes lowered enough to give the wolf a choice. Minutes passed. The guards grew restless. Cassian's face tightened with every second. The wolf did not die. Then the black wolf dragged itself forward. 1 inch. Then another. Its claws scraped against the floor. Its body shuddered with fever. When it reached the bowl, it did not drink. It stared at Mara's hands. She dipped the cloth into the warm water and held it out. The wolf's teeth hovered near her fingers. Kale's heart slammed once against his ribs. Then the impossible happened. The wolf lowered its head. Not in defeat, in permission. Mara touched the wet cloth to its muzzle and wiped away the foam. The creature closed its eyes. A long, broken breath left its body, as if it had been holding pain for too many days and had finally found somewhere to lay it down. The guards stared. Even Brannock became still. Mara leaned closer, her voice barely more than warmth in the cold air. "There you are. I knew you were still in there." The black wolf pressed its forehead against her palm. Kale felt something inside him shift. This was not witchcraft. Witchcraft took. This gave. This woman, mocked by servants and accused by healers, had walked unarmed toward the creature everyone else was ready to kill. And the wolf had chosen her. Behind Kyle, Elder Auric Mar stood in the open doorway, having arrived without announcement. His eyes moved from the calm wolf to Mara's hand, then to the king's face. For the first time, Auric looked afraid, only for a heartbeat. Then he turned his expression smooth again and stepped back into the hall. But Cale heard his whisper to Cassian as clearly as if it had been spoken beside his ear. If the king remembers what loyalty looks like, we lose him. Remove her before sunset. Cale did not react to Auric's whisper. That was what years of war had taught him. Never show the arrow where it landed. He kept his face still, his eyes on Mara as she continued wiping the black wolf's muzzle with the torn cloth. Her hands were still shaking, but the wolf no longer fought. It rested against the gate, breathing in slow, uneven pulls, as though her touch had reminded it how to stay alive. Behind him, Cassian and Auric believed their voices had been low enough. They were wrong. Everyone out, Cale said. The guards looked uncertain. Cassian stepped forward. Your Majesty, the stable remains under medical authority. Not anymore. The words cut through the cold air. Cassian's mouth closed. Cale turned to the nearest captain. Seal the healer hall. No medicines are to be moved. No records are to be burned. No servant is to leave the north wing until questioned. A flicker of panic crossed Cassian's face before he buried it. Mara saw it too. Cale could tell by the way her eyes dropped quickly to the stained bandage in his hand. Auric gave a thin smile. My king, surely this is unnecessary. A frightened Omega has made wild claims. We should not let sentiment shake the court. Cale looked at him then. Sentiment did not put healer seal wax on poisoned cloth. The smile faded. For one long second, the only sound was Brannock's rough breathing. Then Cale turned away. Mara stays with the wolves. Cassian's head snapped up. That is unwise. Cale's voice remained calm. So, was trusting you. No one answered after that. By noon, Frosthall Keep had changed. Doors that had stood open for years were barred. Guards searched healer cabinets. Servants whispered in corners. The council chamber remained closed, and every elder inside looked more offended than afraid, which told Kyle they had not yet understood how close the blade had come to their throats. In the healer hall, shelves stretched from floor to ceiling, filled with jars of dried herbs, silver instruments, folded linen, and thick ledgers bound in black leather. Cassian stood near the doorway, watched by two guards. Cale opened the first ledger himself. The entries were neat. Too neat. Moonguard wolves. Fever. Treatment. Silver restraint. Result. Decline. Moonguard wolves. Agitation. Treatment. Winterbane compress. Result. Decline. Again and again. The same words. The same failure. The same lie wearing different dates. Cale turned another page and stopped. The budget for wolf medicine had tripled in 6 weeks. Yet Mara had been using torn blankets and kitchen broth. His hand tightened around the page until the paper bent. What happened to these supplies? Cassian swallowed. The illness required extraordinary measures. Did it also require empty shelves? Cassian said nothing. A young laundry maid near the back of the hall began to tremble. Cale noticed her. So, did Cassian? Speak, Cale said gently. The girl shook her head. I cannot. You can. Her eyes filled with tears. Old bandages were taken to the ash room every morning. High healers said they were infected. But 2 nights ago, I saw Elder Auric's man carrying a ledger there too. Cassian went pale. Cale moved before anyone else. The ash room lay behind the healer hall, a narrow stone chamber used for burning contaminated cloth. Heat still lingered inside. A black iron stove sat against the far wall, its belly packed with gray remains. Mara was already there. She had come from the stable with soot on her sleeve and fear in her eyes. I followed the smell, she said. Cale looked down. In her hand rested a half-burned scrap of parchment. Most of the writing had turned black, but one line remained clear. Elowin's private treatment notes Moonroot trial successful. Do not use Winterbane on bonded wolves. The world went quiet around him. Elowin. His dead Luna. For a moment, Cale was no longer king. He was a husband standing in the ashes of a truth someone had tried to erase. Mara held the scrap carefully, as if even burned paper deserved tenderness. She knew, Mara whispered. Cassian rushed into the doorway behind them. That paper is meaningless. Kale did not turn. Before he could speak, a guard shoved forward another servant, a stable boy with shaking hands. In the boy's palm was a small glass vial. I found it in her cloak, the guard said, pointing at Mara. Winterbane ash clung to the inside of the vial. Mara went still. Cassian exhaled like a man receiving justice. There, he said softly. The poisoner has revealed herself. Kael looked at the vial. Then at Mara. For the first time since he had found her among the wolves, she looked truly afraid. Not because she feared death, because she feared he might believe them. For one terrible moment, Mara thought Kael believed them. The vial of winterbane ash rested in the guard's palm like a death sentence. Cassian stood behind it with quiet triumph in his eyes. Elder Oric said nothing, but his silence felt satisfied. Mara looked at the king. She did not beg. That nearly broke something in him. She only stood there with soot on her sleeve, burned parchment in her hand, and fear tucked behind her eyes like a wound she refused to show. Kael reached for the vial. Cassian's smile grew faintly. Your Majesty, I recommend immediate confinement, until we know how much damage she has done. How convenient, Mara whispered. Cassian turned coldly. What was that? She lifted her tired eyes to him. I said it is convenient. You lose records. You burn notes. Then poison appears in my cloak. A guard shifted uncomfortably. Oric leaned forward. The accused does not get to lecture the court. Oh. Kale closed his fingers around the vial. No, he said, but the court will answer to me. By late afternoon, the great hall of Frostall Keep was filled. Servants crowded near the back. Guards lined the stone walls. Council elders stood beneath the banners of Stormpine, their faces stiff with insult. Word had spread through the keep faster than flame through dry straw. The Omega had been accused of poisoning the king's wolves. The king had ordered a public judgment. Mara stood alone in the center of the hall. Her patched cloak had been taken from her and laid on a table beside the vial. Cassian stood opposite her. Polished, calm, wounded in all the right places. Kale sat upon the winter throne, but he did not lean back. He looked less like a ruler resting in power and more like a blade waiting to be drawn. Cassian bowed to the crowd. For weeks, I have fought to save the Moon Guard wolves. I used every approved remedy, every royal method. Then this woman entered the quarantine zone without permission. Now poison is found among her things. Murmurs spread. Mara kept her hands folded before her. Kale watched her closely. She was shaking, but only a little. Cassian turned toward him. My king, compassion is admirable, but weakness, disguised as mercy, can destroy a kingdom. Something flickered across Kale's face. Not anger, memory. Then a deep sound rolled from the entrance. Every head turned. Brannock walked into the great hall. Gasps broke through the crowd. The old white wolf moved slowly, but he moved by himself. His fur was still thin. His paw was still wrapped in clean cloth. Yet his silver eyes were clear for the first time in many weeks. Behind him came 3 more wolves. Then the young black wolf Mara had calmed that morning. The guards reached for weapons. Kale raised one hand. No one moves. The wolves entered the hall and stopped between Mara and Cassian. Brannock looked at the healer. His lips lifted. A growl shook the stone floor. Cassian's face drained of color. The beast is unstable. Kale stood. Then heal him. Silence fell. Cassian blinked. Your Majesty? You said you fought to save him. You said your methods were correct. Treat Brannock now, in front of the pack. Cassian looked at the wolf. For the first time, the polished healer seemed small. I would need proper instruments. Kale's voice was quiet. You have them. A guard placed a healer's case at Cassian's feet. No one breathed. Cassian slowly opened the case and removed a silver clamp. Brannock's growl deepened. The younger wolves stepped closer to Mara. Mara's eyes widened. That is what burned him. Cassian snapped. Be silent. Kael did not look away from the wolf. Continue. Cassian took one step forward. Brannock lunged. Not far. Not enough to kill. Enough to make Cassian fall backward with a cry. The hall erupted. Mara moved before anyone could stop her. She did not run at the wolf. She simply stepped in front of him and knelt. Brannock, she whispered. Easy, old friend. The white wolf trembled. His breath came hard. Slowly, Mara lifted her hand and rested it against his muzzle. He closed his eyes. The entire hall went still. Kale descended from the throne, each step echoing across the stone. He stopped beside Cassian, who was still on the floor, clutching the silver clamp like proof against himself. Kale looked from the healer to the calm wolf beneath Mara's hand. Then his voice cut through every lie in the room. Tell me, High Healer, why does he fear the man who healed him? His eyes moved to Mara. And protect the woman accused of poisoning him? The great hall did not recover from Kale's question. It hung above the court like a blade. Cassian stayed on the floor, pale and silent. The silver clamp lay beside his hand, gleaming against the stone. No one needed to explain what it had done. Brannock's burned paw had already spoken for him. Mara remained kneeling beside the old wolf, her palms still resting against his muzzle. She could feel him trembling beneath her touch. Not from rage now, from memory. Kael looked over the crowd. Until this matter is settled, he said, Mara Vale remains under my protection. A wave of whispers broke through the hall. Oric's face tightened. Only a little. But Kael saw it. Cassian slowly rose. Your Majesty, protecting the accused before judgment may appear. Careful, Kael said. One word. Cassian stopped. Kael stepped down from the throne and stood beside Mara, close enough that every noble, guard, and servant could see the choice he was making. She will return to the wolves, he said, and no one touches her without my order. Mara looked up at him, startled. He did not look at her for long. If he did, he feared the court would see too much. The respect, the guilt, the dangerous beginning of trust. Across the hall, Oric leaned toward a council guard and whispered something behind his sleeve. The guard disappeared before the crowd began to move. Mara noticed. So did Brannock. The old wolf's ears lifted. Outside, the winter sky had gone dark far too early. By evening, Frostall Keep had become a place of locked doors and hidden footsteps. Guards stood outside the healer hall. Servants carried water and clean linen to the north yard under Kale's command. For the first time in months, people walked toward Frostmourne stables instead of away from it. Mara should have felt relieved. She did not. Something was wrong. The wolves knew it before anyone else. Little Thorn refused to settle. The young black wolf paced in short circles. Brannock stood near the side door with his nose lifted, breathing deeply. And then Mara smelled it. Oil. Not lamp oil from the palace halls. Pitch oil. Her blood went cold. No, she whispered. A thin line of smoke slid beneath the far wall. Then flame bloomed through the broken hayloft. The stable exploded into panic. Wolves rose with terrified cries. Straw caught fast. Old wood drank fire like it had been waiting for it. Smoke rolled across the ceiling, thick and black, swallowing the moonroot bundles, the rafters, the last pieces of warmth Mara had built with her own hands. Open the doors, she shouted. Two servants outside pulled at the main bar, but it did not move. Locked. From the outside. Mara understood then. This was not an accident. Get back, she cried to the wolves. She grabbed Little Thorn first, tucking the pup against her chest as embers fell around them. The young black wolf limped toward the side passage, coughing hard. Mara pushed it forward, tearing loose a burning blanket with her bare hand. Pain shot through her palm. She ignored it. One by one, the wolves moved toward the laundry entrance. Smoke stung her eyes until tears blurred everything. Somewhere beyond the fire, Brannock barked once, deep and urgent. A beam cracked overhead. Mara turned. Brannock was still inside the center stall. His back leg had caught beneath a fallen rail. No, she breathed. The side door burst open behind her. Kale appeared through the smoke with 3 guards at his back. Mara, Brannock is trapped. Get out. She shook her head and ran deeper into the fire. Kale cursed and followed. Heat slammed into him, but he kept moving. He found Mara beside the old wolf, coughing, pulling at the heavy rail with both burned hands. She was too weak to lift it. She tried anyway. Move, Kale ordered. Together, he and a guard hauled the rail aside. Brannock staggered up, nearly falling. Mara pressed her shoulder against the wolf's chest as if her small body could hold him upright. The roof groaned. Kale grabbed Mara around the waist and pulled her back just as flaming timber crashed where she had been kneeling. They stumbled toward the side passage. Then Mara stopped. Beneath the broken floorboards, half buried in ash, something metal caught the firelight. A small iron box. The mark on its lid was not Cassian's. It was Elowyn's moon crest. Mara, Kale shouted. She dropped to her knees, dragged the box free, and clutched it to her chest. The stable collapsed behind them as they burst into the snow. Cold air struck like mercy. Wolves gathered around Mara, coughing and alive. Kale knelt beside her, his face dark with ash, his hands shaking for the first time anyone had seen. Mara opened the iron box. Inside lay a leather journal, smoke-stained but whole. On the first page, written in Luna Elowyn's hand, were the words, "If the wolves fall ill again, trust no healer who reaches first for silver." Snow hissed against the burning ruins of Frostmourne stables. The old wooden walls collapsed in slow, glowing pieces while servants carried buckets from the well. Guards shouted orders. Wolves coughed in the snow, their bodies pressed close together, alive but shaken. The fire painted every face orange, then black, then orange again. Mara sat on the frozen ground with the iron box in her lap. Her palms were blistered. Soot darkened her cheeks. Her breath came in painful little pulls. But she did not let go of the journal. And Kale knelt across from her. For a long moment, he could not touch it. The moon crest on the cover had been carved by Elowyn's own hand. He remembered the knife she used. He remembered teasing her because she never carved straight lines. He remembered her laughing and telling him that perfection was for people with too much time and not enough wolves. That memory nearly broke him. Mara opened the journal carefully. The first pages were full of treatment notes. Fever cycles, food changes, herbs that calmed bonded wolves, warnings against silver restraints. Elowyn's handwriting was gentle but firm, the way her voice had been when she corrected warriors twice her size. Then Mara stopped turning pages. Kale saw why. One line had been circled 3 times. Winterbane ash does not heal moon guard wolves. It imitates sickness, weakens the bond, and makes loyal beasts appear cursed. Kale's blood went cold. Mara read the next lines aloud, her voice rough from smoke. If this returns, look first to those who profit from a king separated from his wolves. A ruler without his beasts can be surrounded. A grieving ruler can be guided. A guilty ruler can be controlled. The world around Kale seemed to narrow. Fire, snow, the sound of wolves breathing. Nothing else. Elowyn had known. Before she died, she had known someone was using medicine as a knife. His hand closed around the edge of the box. "Black River," he whispered. Mara looked up. Kale's eyes were fixed on nothing. Before the ambush, Brannock refused the healer's tonic. Elowyn thought he was being stubborn. That night, he was too weak to run ahead. He could not warn us. Mara understood before he finished. Cassian had not only poisoned the wolves. He may have helped silence the warning that could have saved the Luna. Kale stood so suddenly the wolves lifted their heads. Then Brannock collapsed. The old wolf fell hard into the snow, his legs giving out beneath him. A broken sound left his chest. Mara dropped the journal and ran to him. "Blankets," she shouted. "Warm water, moonroot, willow bark, and clean linen. Not from the healer hall, from the kitchens." Servants moved before any noble could approve it. Kale knelt beside Brannock, his face stripped of every royal mask. "What do you need?" Mara pressed her ear against the wolf's ribs. "His blood is too cold. The Winterbane is still inside him." Elowyn wrote the countermeasure. And, "Can you make it?" "I can try." Kale heard what she did not say. Trying might not be enough. Mara crushed moonroot between burned fingers until fresh green scent cut through the smoke. She mixed it with warm water, ashflower honey, and a pinch of salt from the kitchen stores. Her hands shook so badly that Kale reached out and steadied the bowl beneath hers. For a heartbeat, Their fingers touched. Neither spoke. There was no room for tenderness yet. Only trust. Hold his head, Mara said. Kale moved behind Brannock and cradled the old wolf's massive skull against his chest. Brannock's eyes rolled with pain. His claws tore through the snow. The young black wolf whined nearby, but did not come closer. Mara brought the bowl to Brannock's mouth. "Come on, old friend," she whispered. "You fought kings. Do not let bad medicine win." Kale looked down at the beast who had carried him through war, grief, and every silence he had refused to name. "I am here," he said, voice breaking. "I should have been before, but I am here now." Brannock swallowed once, then again. For one breath, hope moved through everyone watching. Then his body went still. Too still. Mara froze. Kale felt the great wolf's weight slacken in his arms. "No," he whispered. Mara pressed both hands against Brannock's chest, her burned palms trembling over his heart. Nothing moved. No breath. No sound. Only snow falling softly over the king, the Omega, and the wolf who had carried a kingdom's loyalty until his final heartbeat disappeared beneath her hands. For one breath, the whole kingdom seemed to die with Brannock. No one moved. Snow fell softly over the ruined stable, over the burned beams, over the wolves gathered in a silent circle. Mara Proli pressed both blistered hands against the old wolf's chest, her face white beneath the soot. "Please," she whispered. "Not after all this." Kale held Brannock's head against him, unable to breathe, unable to command, unable to be king. He had ordered armies through blood and fire. He had broken enemy lines with one raised hand. But now there was nothing his power could strike, nothing his crown could save. Mara leaned closer, her ear against Brannock's ribs. Still nothing. Then Little Thorn, the smallest gray pup, limped forward through the snow and pressed his nose against Brannock's paw. A tiny whine escaped him. The young black wolf answered. Then another wolf. Then another. One by one, the Moonguard wolves lowered their heads and began to howl. It was not grief. Not yet. It was a call. Deep, ancient, trembling with everything the kingdom had forgotten. Mara closed her eyes. "Come back," she whispered. "They are still here." Kale bowed his head over Brannock's fur. His voice broke in a way no one in Stormpine had ever heard. "I am still here too." Under Mara's burned hands, Brannock's chest moved. Once. Barely. Mara's eyes flew open. Again, she breathed. Another breath came, rough and weak, but real. The old wolf coughed, his body shuddering violently. Kale held him tighter while Mara rubbed his chest and guided more warm moonroot mixture past his tongue. Brannock's silver eyes opened, clouded with pain, but alive. A sound spread through the courtyard. Not a cheer. Something softer. Servants crying. Guards lowering their weapons. Wolves pressing close as if warmth itself had returned to the world. Kale looked at Mara through the falling snow. She smiled only a little, exhausted beyond words. "I told him not to let bad medicine win," she whispered. A broken laugh escaped Kale before he could stop it. By sunrise, the great hall was filled again. This time, Mara did not stand alone. The Moon Guard wolves entered with her. Brannock walked slowly at her side, weak but upright. Every step he took struck the stone like judgment. Behind him came the black wolf, Little Thorn, and the others who had survived the fire. Cassian stood in chains before the throne. Oryx stood beside him, his noble robes stripped of council gold. On the table lay the evidence. The poisoned bandages, the Winterbane vial, the burned ledger scraps, Elowin's journal, the testimony of servants who had been threatened into silence. The guard who locked the stable from outside had confessed before dawn. Kale did not shout. He did not need to. "High Healer Cassian Vare," he said, "you turned medicine into a weapon. You let loyal beasts suffer so you could call their pain a curse." Cassian lowered his eyes. "Elder Oric Mar," Kale continued, "you tried to separate a king from those who loved him because you believed grief would make me easier to control." Oric's mouth twisted. "I protected the realm from weakness." Brannock growled. Kale stepped down from the throne. "No. You feared compassion because it was the one power you could not buy. The hall fell silent. Cassian was stripped of his title and sent to the iron ash mines to serve the wounded without rank, wealth, or royal protection. Oric lost his council seat, his lands, and every coin stolen through false war accounts. His fortune was given to rebuild Frostmourne's stables. But Cale was not finished. He turned to the court. From this day forward, Frostmourne stables will no longer be a place where the wounded are hidden. His eyes moved to Mara. It will be the sanctuary of the Moon Guard. No wolf, child, servant, elder, or broken warrior will be abandoned there. And Mara Vale will lead it. Whispers rose, but no one dared mock her now. Mara stared at him. Your Majesty, I am only an Omega. Cale walked to Brannock and slowly knelt before the old wolf. Gasps filled the hall. A king, kneeling. Then he looked up at Mara. And I am only a king who forgot what his throne was for. Mara's eyes filled with tears. Brannock lowered his head and rested it against Cale's shoulder. The hall understood then. Power had not saved Stormpine. Pride had nearly destroyed it. It was a low-born Omega with burned hands, torn blankets, and a heart that refused to leave the suffering alone who had brought the kingdom back to life. And when Cale rose, he did not ask Mara to become his Luna. Not yet. He only held out his hand. Stay, he said quietly. Help me build a kingdom where no one has to be useful to be worthy of care. Mara looked at the wolves. Then, at the king. Slowly, she placed her hand in his. And outside the hall, beneath the first clear sky in weeks, the Moon Guard wolves lifted their voices not in pain, not in warning, but in a song of home. So, this is where Mara's story comes to rest. And if you're still here with me at this moment, thank you, truly. Because stories like this are not only about wolves, kings, old stables, or poison medicine. They stay with us because they touch something real. Mara was betrayed, misunderstood, mocked, and blamed for the very kindness that was saving lives. She was hurt, but she didn't beg people to see her worth. She didn't scream for respect from those determined not to give it. She simply kept choosing what was right, even when her hands were shaking. That is a quiet kind of strength. Life will not always explain itself fairly. People may twist your goodness, misread your silence, or make you the villain in a story they broke first. But dignity is knowing when to stop pleading at locked doors and start choosing yourself again. Mara did not become strong because the kingdom finally clapped for her. She was strong in the stable, when nobody came. If this story spoke to you, comment dignity below. And gently, before you go, please like, share, and subscribe for more stories like this.